Hello there, time now for Back Pages tonight here on Sky Sports News, bringing you a first look at the sports stories in the morning's newspapers. Joining us are Jonathan Liu, the Guardian sports writer, and Miguel Delaney, the Independent's chief football writer. Welcome to you both. Before we chat, let's quickly run you through the back pages. Are you watching Ruben? Is the headline on the back of the Telegraph sports section after Marcus Rashford scores twice to guide Barcelona past Newcastle. They also report that the Gallagher Premiership is set to suspend relegation, while Riyad Ahmed is also reported to have got the nod to be England's second spinner for the Ashes, possibly at the expense of Liam Dawson. Back with a bang is the Guardian's take on Rashford's man of the match performance. Elsewhere, they carry the story that former world 100-metre champion Fred Curley has become the latest big name to sign up for the controversial Enhanced Games. Marcus Rashford is front and centre on the back of the Sun as well. Just below is Erling Haaland, who reached a record 50 Champions League goals in his 49th match, 13 games faster than anyone else, as Man City saw off Napoli in the Champions League. And in the Times Online, Jose Mourinho is back and he returns to where it all began. He's the new Benfica boss, 25 years after a 10-game spell there previously. But is he now the altruistic one? Lots to discuss this evening, gents, but let's start with Marcus Rashford and his match-winning performance at St James's Park as Barcelona beat Newcastle. 2 goals from Marcus Rashford, Miguel. A fantastic performance under the watchful eye of the England manager. Rashford's back, isn't he?
It looks like it, yeah. Perfect stage for it, perfect performance, perfect crowd, given Tuchel was there, as you say. And I suppose even Rashford's selection in the last camp was maybe not quite questioned, but it's going to be a running debate, especially given form has been, well, I mean, he improved at Villa, obviously, but it's been a little in and out. And I think there's been an anticipation he needs an impact at Barcelona. And yeah, what an impact, especially in the Champions League. His first Champions League goals since 2021, which maybe says a little, as much about Manchester United, to be fair, as it does about Rashford. But he really looked a player sharp. I mean, not just the 2 goals either, but the manner of the goals. One, a classic forwards header. The other, a brilliant long shot that actually Rashford really has in his armoury. And yeah, a brilliant display and a perfect setting for it.
Jonathan, it was his first and second goals for Barcelona. He looks like he's playing with a smile on his face once again.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think the lesson of, I saw one of the newspapers had this headline, "Are you watching Ruben?" And I suppose there's a tendency to frame this all as some giant joke on Ruben Amorim. But I think the lesson of Rashford's, I hesitate to call it a resurgence because he's only played 4 games, but the fact that he does look comfortable with his football, that he looks physically well, that he's trying things with the ball, which is what he does when he's at his best. It shows the importance that players don't just exist in a vacuum. They need a culture and a system and an environment that gets the best out of their talents. Hansi Flick, I thought, a lot of people thought he was basically going to use Rashford as kind of an impact sub against tiring defences, but Flick's given him responsibility. He's put him on set pieces. He's given him starts. He's told him to take defenders on to try and improve and be a leader to young players like Lamine Yamal. So that's the sort of lesson to take from all this, that if you take a player out of the kind of the dead hand of Manchester United with its carousel of changing systems and managers, you can still get players to flourish. The number of players that have left United and flourished is testament to that.
It is, Miguel, and the way Rashford is playing, Thomas Tuchel will be very pleased by what he's seeing with the World Cup on the horizon.
Yeah, completely. I mean, he's responded to the challenge, I suppose. And I mean, there might actually be an element of fortuitousness about this as well. Because let's not forget, if Barcelona themselves weren't such a basket case, really, I mean, they've been a mess of a club behind the scenes for years now, with all sorts of financial issues. And of course, this summer, their first choice for exactly the sort of role they signed Rashford for was Nico Williams Jr., the Spain international, scored against England in the Euro 2024 final, was supposed to play against Arsenal the other day, but was injured. And the reason that didn't go through, I mean, there's been all sorts of rumours and speculation and reporting about it. But one of the kind of main explanations has been that Barcelona wanted some sort of clause put in there in case they couldn't register him for the Spanish league, because you have to meet certain financial constraints to actually register new players. They had that last year with Dani Olmo. Williams refused, and that basically opened the way for, I mean, okay, despite the size of Rashford's wages, it was going to be a cut price deal compared to what they were going to go with Williams. And suddenly, Rashford, I mean, funnily, I remember first hearing that the first time that Barcelona were in for him was actually the day of Barcelona's 4-0 defeat to Liverpool in May 2029, where, there was meetings between the kind of representatives and all that sort of thing. And so Barca do have a long-standing interest in the player, and he finally got that dream. It was the one he always wanted, I suppose, because another transfer failed. And yeah, there's an opportunity to be seized here, as you say, especially with that World Cup at the end of the season. And so far, in the Champions League at least, he's really grabbed it, because that was a statement display tonight.
Yeah, Rashford then taking his opportunity at Barcelona. And the majority of the back pages have focused on Rashford rather than Newcastle. But we have to talk about Newcastle. Let's just take a look at the Daily Express. Rash ruins Toon party, they say. And Jonathan, for Newcastle, Eddie Howe, the manager, made some pretty big decisions in this one. He dropped the match winner from the last game and their record signing, Nick Woltemade. Do you feel like that was the right decision, or did that hinder them not having a recognised number 9 to start this game?
Yeah, I mean, I think in hindsight, maybe it did. I think the issue with Woltemade is that, obviously his potential is really clear. We saw that at the weekend. He's an X-factor player who brings them something different. The question at the moment is over his physical conditioning. He has not played 90 minutes for a month. He's not played 90 minutes for Newcastle yet. And I suppose that, I would imagine that's the reason why he was left out here. And, I've seen a lot of, kind of instant snap reactions saying, oh, well, Anthony Gordon's not a number 9. He's clearly talented enough. He can clearly develop his game in that area. The questions are, how long is that going to take? And what else are you taking out of his game in the meantime? It's obviously a difficult decision. The fact that Johan Wissa's not in, so that Johan Wissa's not fit either. And that sort of 35 minutes at the start of the game when Newcastle, I think, really had a lot of opportunities on the break against Barcelona. Those are the kind of periods that they haven't been capitalising on. And I think partly that's because they haven't been finishing their chances.
Yeah, it was a better night, though, for Manchester City. They got their win, didn't they, against Napoli? 2-0 winners there. Let's just take a look at this, because Erling Haaland, like you can see here in the sports pages of the Daily Telegraph, he is absolutely formidable. The fastest of 50 Champions League goals. He's done it in 49 appearances, Miguel, 13 quicker than Ruud van Nistelrooy. He seems to be head and shoulders above anything that this competition has ever seen.
Yeah, and never more needed, of course, as well, because City, they had started the season a bit erratically. Obviously, there was the 4-0 win against Wolves, and then the nature of 2 defeats after that, particularly I think the Brighton one raised questions. And there's obviously been all sorts of discussion about, a new team, internalising Guardiola's approach, how long that's going to take, whether they're vulnerable. And then amidst all that, and it is an element of uncertainty, you have the absolute certainty of when Haaland is put on goal, or the ball is really put anywhere near him, and go, well, bar that one chance against United at the weekend. But beyond that, I mean, he's as close to a guarantee as you're going to get. I mean, I think for everyone else, or for any defences facing him, the performance against Manchester United was ominous. And okay, it can be put into the context of United's difficulties, but it was more the sharpness of Haaland, how hungry he looked. And he only continued that tonight against Napoli, pretty much killing that game. Obviously, the red card did kind of frame it a little bit, but when a player like this has any sort of opening, yeah, he's as dangerous as they come. And he very much looks in the mood, and that mood, I suppose, is all the more... it's all the more lively, maybe, given this Sunday he faces a team in Arsenal who he's had a little bit of maybe personal edge with over the past few years, all the kind of the stay humble stuff, the battles with Gabriel, And I think that could be quite a sight and quite a duel this weekend because, yeah, Haaland looks in the mood, as he showed now for 2 games in a row.
Yeah, that's going to be a spicy one. And it was Pep Guardiola who was allowed to be able to take him off, before the end of the match. So it's not like he's going to have fresh legs for that Arsenal game come Sunday, Jonathan. Now this has some added spice to it with these two going at the top of the Premier League and battling it out that way, but also battling it out in Europe. How big now is Super Sunday, Arsenal against City?
It is. I know. I mean, you look at the last kind of 2 or 3 years of these Arteta Guardiola duels, and they have been among, I think, the highest quality games that we've seen in the Premier League over the last decade. In terms of quality, maybe not in terms of drama or excitement all the time, but we've seen in terms of sustained quality as high as potentially the City, the Guardiola Klopp games previously. I think what is going to mark this out, I think, and has marked this out is the physicality of it. You see there is a little bit of aggro, there is a little bit of needle between the two coaches, between these two sides, and this is ultimately, I think, a game that is going to be decided by very fine margins. Like Miguel talked about Haaland coming back to form. I think part of the reason is that the service that he's getting this season is so much better and so much cleaner than it was last season. The return of Foden to form seems to have something to do with that. The signing of Tierney Reinders, I think he's getting the ball a lot earlier, and I think that's when he's at his most deadly.
And Miguel, in the Star, they've made reference of the fact of course, Haaland's nifty 50, but also KDB in his return wrecked. Kevin De Bruyne coming off in the first half an hour, having to be sacrificed almost because of that red card for Napoli.
Yeah, a shame just in terms, I suppose, the residents. Maybe City fans don't see it as a shame, given they know exactly what De Bruyne can do to you if on form. That wasn't allowed here in what felt the most Antonio Conte decision possible, pure pragmatism. No matter the potential romance or impact of a player like De Bruyne maybe offering a bit of magic, he wasn't willing to take the risk. Obviously, De Bruyne, having been such a brilliant driving midfielder for so much of his career, he's in his mid-30s now, not going to press in the way he used to. Conte needed the legs and he needed the security, so he took him off. I think also, given this is a show about newspapers, it probably ruined a lot of journalists' sidebars for this game. Certainly, those were thrown out.
Jonathan smiling there. What did we learn then from this first round of matches, Jonathan? Who looked to be the movers and shakers early on, and who the teams we might see in the latter stages?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's hard to say after one round of games. I think the team that probably looked the most ominous was Paris Saint-Germain, dispatching Atalanta last night. I mean, I think especially given the injuries they had, that they weren't at full strength, but Kvaratskhelia sort of tearing Atalanta apart. That, I think, was an ominous sign to the rest of the continent, to the rest of the competition, that they're not going to be giving up their title without a fight. I think the English teams have performed pretty well. I think there is a certain resentment on the continent at the increasing financial dominance of the Premier League, and I think you see a lot of teams have gone out there possibly with a point or two to prove against them. But I think by and large, the Premier League teams have acquitted themselves quite well.
Miguel, what have we learnt then?
Yeah, I mean, the one thing about the new competition in this stage of it is actually the learnings are actually quite limited at this stage, because as we saw from last season with Paris Saint-Germain, the European champions themselves, you can get off to a very bad start and recover. Obviously, a big theme of the competition is, as Jonathan mentioned there, English power. It's the first time in history there's ever been 6 clubs from one country in the competition. Now, 4 wins, 2 defeats. Those defeats at least explainable. Chelsea had a difficult opening game against Bayern. Bayern didn't seem absolutely completely convincing, must be said. And Newcastle, given all their issues this season or this summer, then had a difficult opening game against Barcelona, albeit a Barca without Lamine Yamal. I think a lot of that went as expected. And I have to say, I do have criticisms and a few reservations about this new Champions League format, just in the context of why it exists. It exists basically because the super clubs were pushing for a Super League and they wanted more games throughout the season. It's created a parallel league. That's why I think Arsenal's strength and depth is going to be key this season. But it does give also mid to lower clubs, mid to lower financially resourced clubs, more games in Europe. Now, while that can have an effect on domestic leagues, it also means you get quite nice stories this week. Like, for example, Karabag coming back against Benfica, like the Belgian side, Union Saint-Gilloise, beating PSV Eindhoven, and what felt a real kind of shift among some of the lower leagues there. That is what the Champions League and Old European Cup is supposed to be about, that vitality and variety to it. It's maybe just a pity because of this financial imbalance that we're talking about, it doesn't necessarily last as long into the tournament. But as far as kind of real education from this, it's going to take us a few months.
Yeah, money does talk in this competition, doesn't it? Miguel, Jonathan, thank you for the moment. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll look at more of the sporting stories in the morning's newspapers, including this in The Guardian, as the pressure continues to grow on Graham Potter at West Ham. You're watching Back Pages tonight. Welcome back to The Independent's Miguel Delaney and Jonathan Liu of The Guardian. Let's talk West Ham now. The West Ham manager, Graham Potter, under increasing pressure after 3 losses from 4 Premier League games. In The Independent, Miguel, reporting that West Ham have identified new managerial candidates as pressure grows on Graham Potter. Give us the latest on this then, and how important it will be to get a result when they host Palace in the Premier League.
So the one I'm reporting there is Gary O'Neill, who's, of course, I think, despite some debate, has earned a lot of respect around the Premier League for his work at Bournemouth in particular, and Wolves. This was after, I suppose, that some of the names have been reported, like Slaven Bilic as a potential return, Nuno Espirito Santo. But I'm told Gary O'Neill is quite high on the list, exactly for the work, and also for the feeling that he can adapt to existing or ready-made squads, as well as having that Premier League experience. And the very fact we're having this discussion and these names are swirling around obviously points to the fact that Potter is under extreme pressure. Now, while some people might see it as a bit unsavoury, maybe that those names are being discussed at this point, that is the game. Everyone knows the reality. Every manager has been in the opposite situation as well, and clubs also have to start thinking when results go against them. And I think that the common feeling in football is really that West Ham need a performance, maybe a result this weekend, or else we could see change. I think from what I'm told, the shortlist at the moment potentially goes to about 5 names, but the one I reported there is O'Neill, who I do think actually is a good fit.
Yeah, and in your paper, Jonathan, reports of Slaven Bilic and Nuno Espirito Santo being touted as a potential replacement. What's your take on this, and whether Potter can keep his place and is the right man to turn this around?
Yeah, I think stories like this come out for a reason. Even at a particularly leaky club like West Ham, I think once this speculation is allowed to generate, it often becomes self-perpetuating. I think, Potter doesn't just need 1 or 2 results. I think he probably needs to go on a run of 8 or 10 games unbeaten. And, given the players he has at his disposal, it's hard to see that happening. The broader question here is, if you look at some of the names that have been touted, Bilic, kind of a nostalgia hire, Nuno, Gary O'Neill, even Sean Dyche has been mentioned. These are all coaches who play very different styles of football. This is the eternal issue with West Ham, who go from Bilic to Allardyce, to Pellegrini, to Moyes, and back to Moyes and Lopetegui. What is their identity? Who is at the top of this football club driving the identity, the idea, and essentially that is the thing that is going to determine all the decisions that flow from that, such as identifying the coach and identifying recruitment. That's basically what's been lacking at West Ham for years and years now. That you cannot appoint a progressive manager like Potter if you are going to junk him after 4 games on the strength of results. You do need to give that idea a little bit of time to take. But at a club like West Ham, who are so confused about their identity, these situations are going to keep coming up.
Yeah, I'll tell you who is not confused about their identity at the moment, Benfica, because they've picked Jose Mourinho as their new manager. This man was only just sacked a few weeks ago, it feels like, from Turkish football at Fenerbahce, and now he's back in management. And Miguel, we know Jose Mourinho very well here in England, don't we? We know that he knows how to grab a headline. He's saying, when he spoke to the media most recently, I'm more altruistic now, less egocentric. Come on, do we believe him?
Well, the ego has taken a bit of a dent in the last few years, really, because, I mean, look, Mourinho is one of the greatest coaches of all time. But unfortunately, we do have to talk about that in the past tense, because he hasn't even won a league title in a decade. And that was at Chelsea in the Abramovich era, which is obviously because of, I suppose, recent events is sort of being looked at in a different way. And of course, then, what is his first Champions League game back? Well, it's away to Chelsea. It is very almost typical of Mourinho's career, the way these kind of storylines and narratives swirl around him. And he, to be fair, has a great, he's got prowess almost in creating those storylines himself. The one thing with Mourinho, look, there's obviously actually a romance to this, given Benfica were his club, although he's always been more associated with Porto in Portugal because of that Champions League in 2004 and the UEFA Cup in 2003. He's from Lisbon. Benfica were his club. There was an element of unfinished business given the way he left there after one of his first managerial jobs. So there is actually a romance to that. I suppose the problem is always that Mourinho's football doesn't always give itself to romance, because he still is quite, I suppose, the perceptions of counterattack, of digging in, they never really go away. And it has felt in some of his more recent jobs, the whole Mourinho cycle has been accelerated. There's the initial charm and all the colour and the personality, and that gives way to maybe some of the kind of more debate, more of the debate or noise around the performances. I mean, that's what happened in Fenerbahce, who were initially enthralled to the whole Mourinho personality. But yeah, Benfica, they're a massive historic European club. If because of finances can't quite get to that level anymore, still a huge Portuguese club who have been at a lower ebb over the past few years. And there is, I mean, just even to what Johnny was saying there about kind of styles, very few clubs in the modern game actually go back to this sort of approach, and especially when you have progressive managers and this is the modern way. So it's going to be interesting to see how it goes. I think actually that Chelsea game and even how Mourinho approaches it could actually tell a lot, especially given the kind of elite stage that fixture represents.
I'm also interested, Jonathan, in your view on this, because is this a sign that he's taken this Benfica job that he isn't possibly able to get the bigger Premier League jobs now? I mean, it's been 10 years since he last won a league title.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we all know this. This has been the story of Mourinho's career for the last 10 years, a gentle decline. Does he have a new tactical idea? Does he have some grand plan? But no. But what he has is this. He has a new soundbite, and he can take established players. He can take a good team and keep it good for a bit, which is basically what he did at Roma and Fenerbahce. The interesting thing is, at a club like Benfica, because of their financial model, you do kind of need to bring younger, newer players through, simply to fatten them up for market, to put them out on and say, make them ready for selling to bigger clubs. Is Mourinho the player to do that, or is he going to stick with the tried and tested as we've done before?
Miguel, you've got about 10 seconds. I'm wondering what the Chelsea fans will feel when they see him again in the opposition dugout. Do they still have that sense of nostalgia for him, or will they just be indifferent?
They will. There'll be celebration of him. He's one of the great figures in the club's modern history, regardless of everything else around it. And he brought them that first title in 50 years. There'll be all sorts of talk at the special one.
Oh, I can't wait for that matchup. Miguel Delaney, Jonathan Liu, thank you for your thoughts on Back Pages. Great to have you with us. Now, if you missed any of the show, there's another chance to see Back Pages tonight at 1:30. And the show is also available, as always, as a podcast. Just download Back Pages on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And you can join us again on Friday night, where our guests will be Mark Ogden and John Cross. Coming next, much more on the Marcus Rashford brace that ruined Newcastle's return to the Champions League. They run out 2-1 winners, Barcelona, against Newcastle at St James's Park. What a night for Marcus Rashford.